Happy Sunday, everybody. It is NFL Week 13. We are rolling along. We finally, it feels like, have a great slate of games. I cannot wait to get into these. I'm Erin Dolan, joined by the fabulous Moody. Now, look, the holiday season is upon us, and what that means after Thanksgiving is everybody is sick. So should Eric need to cough during this, don't even worry about it. But either way, I know he's highly caffeinated.
Yeah, no, that's right. You mentioned the holiday season. I feel like this is the time of the year my wife and I are strategically trying to hide gifts from our children. So wish us luck with that, Erin.
I actually stopped back home with my parents, and we already had gifts wrapped. And I'm like, I'm 26. I'm way too old for this stuff. But nonetheless, let's get into these games. First, looking at the market movers. There have been some huge shifts in the market this week. Look at this Tennessee-Philadelphia game. The line is moving in favor of Tennessee all the way down from 6.5 to -4.5. Total slightly dropping. Then you got Seattle versus the Rams. That's moving up in favor of Seattle now, -6.5. Denver, Baltimore. People having faith in the Ravens this week. It is all the way up to -9.5. And then we got right now this Las Vegas game versus the Rams, or not the Rams, sorry. We're going to the Chargers, and that line is moving up too for LV, -2.5 total. Kind of staying around the same. But there's more games on the board that are even more exciting, including the Jets versus Vikings, which is why we're going to bring in Jeremy Fowler. Jeremy, how are you doing this morning?
Erin, great to be with you.
Yes, great to have you. Now, Jeremy, Justin Jefferson, he's been a problem for many teams so far this season, but Sauce Gardner could potentially slow him down. What have the Jets said about trying to slow him down today?
Well, Erin, I spoke to linebacker C.J. Mosley. He said, we're not really worried about the one-on-one matchups because we have to stop the run first with Dalvin Cook. Everything the Vikings do thrives off of the play action, so they're going to start there. And talking to people with both teams, there's not a huge expectation that Sauce Gardner is going to be matched up on Jefferson a ton. I talked to the Vikings, they said that Sauce typically plays one side. So when Jefferson comes over there to the outside, then they'll be matched up. But the Vikings are like, hey, if Sauce Gardner wants to travel with Jefferson, we're okay with that because we move him around so much. We will create matchup problems in other areas of the field because Jefferson's going to be in the slot, he's going to be in motion, all over the place. So it's most likely that the Jets stick to a lot of their zone defense and Sauce plays his side of the field.
No, great stuff, Jeremy. So another question for you. On the other side, you've got the Vikings. They've played 8 games that have been decided by a touchdown or less, and they have won every one of them. So why do the Vikings think they have thrived in such games?
Well, it's funny, I asked somebody with the team about that, and they sort of laughed because they're like, look, we don't rank all that highly in many statistical categories. It's not like we're putting up 40 points a game. It's just about timely playmaking. They feel like they have 4 or 5 different options on offense that could beat you at any time. The addition of T.J. Hawkinson has been a sneaky, huge move for them because they feel like he's such a matchup problem that actually opens things up for Justin Jefferson. And then the Vikings have also thrived off of trying to create a different challenge every week. This week, Kevin O'Connell told his defense, hey, we can determine this game, especially playing against a young quarterback like Mike White, by not missing a snap, creating a few turnovers, making the quarterback uncomfortable, which he wasn't so comfortable playing against the Bears last week, had a pretty clean pocket. They want to change that in a big way.
And Jeremy, it looks like you got the marching band behind you. They were very excited to hear what you had to say this morning on Bet. So enjoy the game, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Erin. Appreciate it.
Oh, goodness, that was loud. All right, Eric, let's pick this game. Right now, the Vikings are laying 3. That total at 44.5. How are you playing it?
Yeah, I would say in this game, Erin, there is a prop bet that I like. So I like Garrett Wilson over 58.5 receiving yards. And just from watching him on film all year, he's a great rookie wide receiver. And things have really trended up for him this year. But he really took things to a next level whenever the Jets decided to make a quarterback change. That was really the only thing holding back this offense. So they benched Zach Wilson. They put in Mike White. He had a great game last week against the Bears. And you look at Wilson, he caught 5 of 8 targets for 95 receiving yards. One thing about Wilson, he's had 92 or more receiving yards in 3 out of his last 4 games. And he's got a great matchup against the Vikings defense that's allowed the most passing yards per game to opponents this season. So I really like Garrett Wilson in this matchup.
I actually really like that bet. That's a good one. And Wilson was really great last week, and I feel like he was really happy to have Mike White under center, considering some of the comments he made about Zach Wilson. But I'm going to go with the Jets. Take the points here at +3. I've been talking about this over the past couple of days on Daily Wager. The reason being the Vikings defense, and you kind of hit on this, Eric, they're not good against the pass whatsoever. They're ranked 31st. They're also one of the worst teams in terms of total yards allowed per game. It's really about this Vikings defense. It's not really about the offense. And now that we've seen Mike White under center for one game, and you don't want to overreact, obviously, to just one game, but he had 315 passing yards, 3 touchdowns to 0 interceptions against that Bears defense that on paper is better than the Minnesota Vikings. The Jets defense is really good, which also helps them in this situation. I like Mike White under center in this one. And we've kind of talked about this a few times. Are the Vikings as good as the record reflects? Are they really as good? I think this could be a closer game than people expect, so I'd rather take the points with the Jets. Now let's continue with another game that's on the board. Dolphins versus San Fran, another really good matchup. San Fran right now laying 4.5. That total at 45.5. Spread, total, player prop. How you playing this one, Eric?
Yeah, I like the under in this game, Erin. So you've got a lot of storylines going on here between the Dolphins and the 49ers. You've got, I guess, the mentor in Kyle Shanahan and the students in Mike McDaniel. You've got Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson playing against their own team. So I think my point is that there's a lot of familiarity between these two teams. And because of that, and also, the 49ers are dealing with a lot of injuries as well. I just think because of that familiarity, this can be a lower scoring game than people anticipate. And then one thing about the Dolphins, I would say the 49ers defense will be their first, I would say, legitimate challenge that this offense has faced. And so, again, because of that, I do like the under. But when you look at the betting trends, too, it also suggests to play the under in this game because the under is 5-2 in the Dolphins' last 7 games against a team with a winning record. Furthermore, you look at the under, it's 14-5 in the 49ers' last 19 games. And so I would bet the under here between the Dolphins and the 49ers.
I like that play, and I have an under as well, but I'm going to isolate this to the Miami side and go under 20.5 points. San Francisco, their defense right now, ranked first, yards allowed per game, points allowed per game, holding opponents to an average of 16 points per game, again, first in the league, and first downs allowed per game. The Miami offense is going to struggle, but if you look at the last 4 games, Miami is averaging 34 points. Look who they played. The Texans, the Browns, the Bears, the Lions. They have not faced a defense as tough as the San Francisco 49ers in a while. On top of that, let me just remind you, and I feel bad for bettors that bet this last week. The Miami Dolphins, their team total last week, 30.5. They had 30 points at the half, and they did not score in the second half. Okay, so they hit the under of 30.5. People have a bad taste in their mouth. This week, obviously, it's a lot lower at 20.5. I'm still going to rock with the under. All right, let's continue, Eric, with these good games. I'm really hyped up for this show today because we have so many great matchups. Let's talk about Kansas City versus the Bengals. And if you take a look back to how these teams have been playing over the last couple of weeks, so since week 3, Kansas City, yes, they haven't been good against the number 4-5. But Cincy, meanwhile, going 8-1. I just think, both these teams are kind of ramping up over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, the Chiefs not being as good against the number, but doesn't mean they can't win this matchup. Bring in Dan Garziano to talk more on this game. Dan, this just feels like you get all the revenge spots. This is one of the best games on the slate. We know that the Chiefs, unfortunately, lost twice to this team last year, put a bad taste in their mouth. They know this. This feels like a revenge spot. How do they plan on keeping their emotions in check for this game?
That's been a big topic of conversation for the Chiefs this week, Erin. Chris Jones, the defensive tackle, who missed a key sack on Joe Burrow toward the end of that AFC Championship game, he said that was a driving force for him all off season. There is no doubt, talking to people around the Chiefs this week, that they are still upset about obviously the way those last 2 games went, especially the AFC Championship game. Coach Andy Reid said that basically the message this week is if you want to use that game as motivation, great, that's fine. Just don't get your emotions too high to the point where you can't execute what you need to do. And he advised them, if you're going back and reviewing that game, get mad, get motivated, do whatever you want to do, but also find at least one thing that you individually could have done better and apply it to this game this week.
So, Dan, the Bengals won a big game last week without Joe Mixon and Jamar Chase. So what is the status for today?
Sounds really good on Jamar Chase today, Eric. They're expecting to have him back after missing 4 games. I talked to their offensive coordinator, Brian Callahan. He said it is possible he might have to come off the field a little more than usual when he's fully healthy. He said, but even that's tough because he doesn't want to come off the field, and we don't really love taking him off the field. So they expect to have Chase back. He could have played last week, everybody felt, but he just wanted one more week, so he should be good to go. Mixon, though, it sounds like he probably isn't going to go. They haven't made a final decision. They want to see how he feels today, but they have not cleared him from concussion protocol, and there's some pessimism around his ability to go today. Samaje Perine going to be a big part of things regardless, right? Like, he's the third down back. He's the passing down back. He's a guy that I think that they feel has earned more carries even once Mixon is back. But if Mixon is out, you'll see a lot of Perine just like he did last week in Nashville.
Makes a lot of sense, and honestly, I'm banking on Jamar Chase to score a touchdown, even though he's coming back, Dan. But enjoy the game. You got one of the best ones in that revenge spot there, so we're looking forward to your coverage. All right, Eric, it is time to pick one of the best games on the slate. I haven't been this amped up, and when you look at the total of 53, you're like, this is going to be a good one. You can just feel it. So how are you playing it, Eric?
Yeah, no, you're right. I am very excited about this. Whether you're a bettor or you're someone that plays fantasy football, this is like I guess the best way to put it, like an offensive bonanza. And I like the over here. I know the I know the line is very large, but I believe these two teams can exceed it, and here's why. So you look over the last three games. Like, you've got the Chiefs, you got the Bengals. They both rank in the top 4 of total yards per game. And again, over that same time period, over the last 3 games, you got both of these teams. They rank in the top 5 in points scored per game. And I'm like, you've got playmakers at every position on each team, and you've got Jamar Chase that's coming back as well. We all remember fondly what he did to this team last year with that masterful performance. And you know he'll want to hit the ground running, no pun intended, in this game. But you know the Chiefs and the Bengals, they've combined to average like 57 points per game in their last 3 meetings. And if we look back at last year's game, they combined for 65 points in that one. So it's a lot to like in this game, but just like a moth to the flame, I just keep getting drawn to the over here.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people are going to want to be taking that over, and I hope there's a lot of points, because for this game, I decided, you know what? Go big or go home. I feel like I need to give out a same-game parlay, and I even went on SportsCenter this morning and gave this out. It is a 4-1 same-game parlay, but we got 3 legs. We're going to start off with the Kansas City Chiefs winning this one outright. I don't want to touch that number. As we saw, they're 4-5 against the spread in their last 9 games. With that being said, this is a revenge spot. They lost twice to this team last year. They know what is on the line. On top of that, the Chiefs offense is averaging 28 points over the last 4 games, and then on top of that, they're holding opponents to 17 points in 3 of the last 4 games. Just because I like the Chiefs to win outright doesn't mean I don't like some player props on the Bengals side. I like Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns. He's hit over this mark in 7 of 11 games played, and we know that on the Chiefs defense, they're pretty leaky against the pass. So Joe Burrow could have a big game. You talk about liking the over, Eric. So it makes a lot of sense to take Joe Burrow over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And for what it's worth, I've only been able to find this line on Caesars. If you look at FanDuel, other sports books like that, it is up to 2.5. So I do like that you can get this on Caesars at 1.5. With that being said, Jamar Chase, anytime touchdown scorer. This guy had 3 receiving touchdowns the last time he played against this team. On top of that, he's coming back, okay? I understand that. You might be thinking, oh, how many snaps is he going to take? He's going to be fine in this one. He's going to play a lot of snaps. He's going to be great. He's going to score a touchdown. I can just feel it. He's got 7 touchdowns in the 6 games that he has played so far this season. So that's a same-game parlay for you right there. It is the holiday season, so hopefully that cashes. You can get that at 4-1. Let's continue rolling with this one. Not as exciting of a matchup, but the NFC East is definitely one that we've been keeping our eye on. This division's been crazy good this year in terms of the record. All right, we're going to go with the Commanders right now, -2.5 versus the Giants. That total pretty low at 40.5. What's your play here?
Yeah, I'm looking at a prop bet in this one, and it's Daniel Jones under 200.5 passing yards. So, I look at Daniel Jones, and I think the only other quarterbacks who have averaged like fewer passing yards per game than Jones are Mac Jones, Taylor Heineke, and Marcus Mariota. That's great company that he's keeping there. And so he just doesn't throw or accumulate, I would say, a ton of passing yards per game. And I look at this Commanders defense, and just from watching them on film and looking at the stats, I'm like, they've played very well this season, but recently they've played very well. Like over the last 3 games, you look at Washington's defense, like they've allowed the second fewest passing yards per game. And this just has the makings when I look at this game with the teams involved and how they play, football. I just really look at this as like a defensive battle. And I envision like both the Giants and the Commanders really leaning heavily on their respective running games in this game. And so I do like Daniel Jones under passing yards in this one.
All right, I do like that one. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring affair by any means, and this is just a lean here for me. I do lean towards the Commanders here, just given I do think the Giants, they're really good at the beginning of the season, but we've seen like Saquon Barkley kind of be more quiet as of recently, and maybe the Giants are finally hitting where they hit their peak at the beginning of the season and things aren't going to be as great towards the end. The Commanders, meanwhile, they've won 6 of their last 7. 5 of those have been under Taylor Heineke. I trust Heineke, honestly, more than I trust Carson Wentz, and Heineke's going to be under center again today. This is going to be just one of those tough games. It is a divisional game, so you expect, both these teams to go all out, especially in terms of standings. But it's a slight lean here. It's not a play that I'm looking to run to the window, but I would lean towards taking the Washington Commanders. All right, let's get to another segment that we do each and every week. Little dog, big dog. Word on the street, Eric, is that you have a big dog for us today.
I do. I'm going to go back to the Titans again for this week. It's a lot that I like about this football team. And you look at Tennessee. I'm like, they have the ability, I would say, to play sound defense, which I believe will keep this game against the Eagles close. Now, I know everyone's thinking about what the Eagles did to the Packers last week with a record-setting number of rushing yards. But you look at this Tennessee Titans defense, I'm like, they rank first in run-stop win rate. And so they should be able to stop the run. Offensively, I look at Tennessee just being able to do what they can to keep Jalen Hurts and the Eagles offense off the field. And by leaning heavily on Derrick Henry in the running game to do that. But I think even if the Eagles stack the box, the way that the passing game has trended up for Tennessee, Traylon Burks and Robert Woods, I do think Tannehill will be able to take advantage of that. And so I just believe this game will be a lot closer than what people think. So I do like the Titans to cover here. But you look at some of the betting trends. I'm like, the Titans are 5-0 against the spread in their last 5 road games. Furthermore, you got the Eagles. They're 16-3-1 against the spread in their last 20 games following an against the spread loss. So when I combine all these factors, looking at the betting trends, just my film analysis and some other things, I'm going with the Titans here.
Oh, man, pick it against my Philadelphia Eagles. I'm surprised the line has honestly dropped this far, but it does make a lot of sense. You always worry about the Eagles in the second half of games. I'm worried about them just in terms of this is a stiffer competition than they've played at the beginning of the season. We talk about this so much about that Eagles schedule. It has been a cakewalk. I'm not going to lie. Even though I love that they're winning left and right, it doesn't mean that they're winning against the best competition. So this should be a difficult matchup for them. Now I'm going to go back to the good old faithful little dog here in the New York Jets. I talked about this earlier in the show. I would just take the points with the Jets against the Vikings. Oh my gosh, I can't even take that dog barking in my ear, seriously. But nonetheless, the reason being is this Jets defense should be able to contain this Minnesota Vikings offense. And then you got a Jets offense that can go against a Minnesota defense that is just honestly not good. They're ranked 31st in total yards allowed per game. They're dead last against the pass. If Mike White gets going the way he did last week against the Chicago Bears when he threw for 315 yards, they have a shot to even win this game. So I'd rather take the points with the 3. I'm surprised it hasn't really bounced around at all this week. I thought maybe it'd go up to 2.5, maybe it would go out, but I don't know. It's been staying at 3, so I'm just feeling the Jets as my little dog for this week. Now, there are some other games that we have not hit on, Eric, so let's take a look at some of those lines that are available right now. You got Cleveland at Houston, that total right now at 46.5. Pittsburgh at Atlanta. I will say I do like the Steelers to win outright in this one. That game is now a pick-em. Jacksonville at Detroit, another game that the line's been bouncing around from back and forth to both these teams, but a high total of 51. Make sure you take a look at those anytime touchdown scores. And then you got Indy at Dallas for Sunday Night Football. Dallas laying 10.5 points. And now it's time to bring in Tyler Fulghum from beautiful Las Vegas. It is super early there. Tyler, how you feeling?
A little tired because Daily Wager started an hour early at 5 a.m. instead of 6 a.m. local, but the sun finally coming up behind me here in Las Vegas. So the day is here. I'm ready to rock and roll, Erin.
I know. I'm sure it was interesting walking through the casinos this morning, especially that early. I'm sure you saw some things. So let's get into some of the games that are on the slate today. We're going to start off with Cleveland versus Houston. How you playing this one?
Yeah, this is obviously a great spot for the Cleveland rushing game led by Nick Chubb against the worst run defense in the entire NFL. Of course, people will be focused on Deshaun Watson's debut here against the only other team he's ever played for. So it's going to be a charged environment. The Browns are clearly a better team, but lane 8, I'm a little uncomfortable because of the variable of Watson's first game in more than 700 days and the Texans likely treating this like kind of their Super Bowl. So I'm going to tease Cleveland down to 2 and pair that with the Seattle Seahawks against my LA Rams, who put Matthew Stafford on IR. No Aaron Donald. We know Cooper Kupp is gone. They've just been wrecked by injury on the offensive line. Their run game stinks. A'Shaun Robinson, one of their top run defenders, is out as well. So the Rams waving the white flag. This season is over with. Seattle obviously has something to play for, so tease them from 6.5 to just a half point. All they got to do is win the game. Doesn't matter the score. As long as Seattle wins the game, that's a winner. And as long as the Cleveland Browns win by a field goal in Houston, which I think is very reasonable, you got a winning 2-leg 6-point teaser there.
That's a great way to play this game. I think a lot of people are looking to put the Browns in some teasers, and it makes a lot of sense. I don't like the number at -8, to be honest, and 92% of the money is on the Cleveland Browns to cover. You know I don't like going in on a game where the public is that heavy on it. But let's continue down the slate. What about Miami versus San Fran? This is a huge matchup. San Fran laying 4.5 at this point with a total at 45.5.
Yeah, Aaron, this is an interesting game. Obviously, you got Kyle Shanahan against Mike McDaniel, kind of the teacher versus the student. McDaniel's offense has been unbelievable this year. Tua, Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, the run game. But San Francisco's defense has been elite this year. Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and D'Amico Ryans coordinating that. There's some injury issues on both offenses, though, Aaron, and that has me kind of leaning towards the under here. I don't think we see a shootout. Both Miami and San Francisco, they don't necessarily operate at a warp speed pace. They like to use all the play clock to get that window dressing, motions, audibles, all that good stuff. Then on the Miami side, Austin Jackson, right tackle, he's out. Taron Armstead, left tackle, doubtful. On the San Francisco side, Christian McCaffrey a little banged up. He's going to play, but Elijah Mitchell, the top backup running back, he's out. Deebo Samuel is questionable. Trent Williams, the left tackle, is questionable. So there is questions on both sides for this offense. I also think play volume is going to be a little suppressed. That's why win, lose, or draw for either side, I like the under 45.5.
That makes a lot of sense, and of course that line's still continuing to drop as we lead into kickoff. All right, last game. This is, for me personally, I think this is the most exciting game on the board. Kansas City versus the Bengals. Right now, KC laying 2.5 with that total at 53, the highest on the board. Are you looking to play an over here? The spread, player props, what you got for me?
Looking to play an over. I think that's why you and I think this is the most exciting game on the schedule today. It's Joe Burrow. It's Patrick Mahomes. Burrow is getting Jamar Chase back. It's a rematch of the AFC Championship game, which is sure the Chiefs are remembering. So you have two of the three heaviest throw teams in the National Football League. Neither defense is all that imposing. So I see a lot of play volume. I see a lot of throwing. I see a lot of explosive plays from both offenses. That means a lot of points. It's the highest total on the board. That's not going to scare me from taking it over here with the Bengals and the Chiefs.
Love it, love it. And like you said, a ton of points potentially being scored in this one. But let's bring back in Eric Moody because it is now time for our segment, Take It to the Bank. Let's take a look back at last week. And, okay, Tyler and I, not so much. Joe Burrow, he was so close. I needed 6 more yards. And Tyler, unfortunately, we didn't get there with Jeff Wilson. But Eric, you got the win with Eckler. So for this week, we're going to still start with you, Tyler. Give me your Take It to the Bank.
You know, the LA Chargers, not really a team that you associate with trust and confidence. However, I am going to trust them with my Take It to the Bank plus 2.5 against the Vegas Raiders. Now, I'm going against a significant move. The Chargers were 2.5-point favorites earlier in the week. Now they're 2.5-point dogs. The game's in Vegas, but I don't love this spot for the Raiders. They're coming off back-to-back overtime road wins. Josh Jacobs, their top running back, who's been awesome, questionable all week, handled 39 40 touches last week. The other game that they won in overtime the week prior, he handled almost 30. He's just been a workhorse who might be a little tired, along with the rest of the team coming off back-to-back overtime games. So as long as Justin Herbert and Austin Eckler have a big day on offense, I think the Chargers can escape with a win or at least cover 2.5.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Raiders have not looked good as of recently. So, Eric, since you were the winner last week, come on, give us another winner here. What are you doing for your Take It to the Bank?
Well, you know what, Aaron? I'm going to stay with the Los Angeles Chargers, and I really like Keenan Allen in this game to go over 64.5 receiving yards. Now, I know he's played, the last couple of games. He's dealing with a hamstring injury for most of the season, but he's looked healthy. He's improving, so he's trending up, which is good. And one thing about Allen, he's played 16 career games against the Raiders. He's averaged 9 targets and 66 receiving yards in each of those games. And I believe he can have a eerily similar performance on Sunday against the Raiders, because one thing about Las Vegas, you look at that defense, they're allowing the 7th most passing yards per game to opposing quarterbacks. And so I really like Allen in this matchup. Should be Justin Herbert's top target. So bet the over.
We are moving through. It is sickness season. It is okay, Eric. It is okay. I feel like we're all going to try to not be. Take a drink of water. Drink. But nonetheless, clearly you guys were talking before the show, doing your take it to the banks together, basically the same game. Not the same one, but same game. But I'm going to go to the Eagles-Titans game. What did you expect? This is one of my favorite matchups on the board as well today. I'm going to go A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown score. I think he scores on his former team in the Tennessee Titans, because this Titans defense, by the way, ranked 31st against the pass. This just feels like one of those revenge games for A.J. Brown. I feel like he was not utilized to his ability there on the Tennessee Titans. And on top of that, you got Jalen Hurts, who has targeted him 85 times this season. 34 times in the past 5 games. They have unbelievable chemistry. He scored a touchdown last game, for what it's worth, against the Green Bay Packers, and that was with an illness, a popped blood vessel, and he also lost 7 pounds before that game. I think today he's going to find the end zone and score. A.J. Brown, anytime touchdown score. Now, Tyler, before we let you go, I hear you have a World Cup play.
Yeah, the United States, they were bounced by Netherlands. It was a fun ride while it lasted, but a team that won the group that the Americans came out of is in action today against Senegal. 2 Eastern kickoff on the pitch. I'm going to play this game under the total of 2.5. England is obviously the favorite. Their preferred style of football is to grab a 1-0 lead and then suffocate you defensively. So I expect them to grab that 1, maybe 2 goal lead and then really pack it in and make it difficult for Senegal to create chances to put a 3rd goal on the board. The concern would be England scoring 3 or 4 goals themselves, but I think a 1-0, 2-0 outcome is the most likely. That's why I'm going to play it under 2.5.
All right, the World Cup has been definitely fun to watch and one to keep an eye on. So, Tyler, thank you for joining Bet today. Go get some sleep.
Gladly.
All right, Eric, we're going to continue here with our Before We Let You Go. There's a ton of NBA games on the slate that you can choose from and just a variety of things that you can bet on. But where are you heading before we let you go?
Yeah, I do have an NBA pick, and I'm chuckling because I was like, I almost made it through talking about Keenan Allen.
So close. So close.
So close. But I really like the Celtics. So you've got Boston. They're going up against the Nets today. And you look at this Nets team, and they've played very well at home this season. It's impressive, but still, I look at the Atlantic Division and the Celtics. They're the top team here. And one thing about Boston, they've won 14 of the last 16 games, and 11 of those wins have been by at least 8 points. And the Celtics, they're coming off of a loss in which I would say Jason Tatum really had his worst game of the season, so I expect him to bounce back. But you look at Boston, they're 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 meetings between these two teams, as well as 4-0 in the last meeting. I would say the last 4 meetings in Brooklyn. So I do like the Celtics to cover the spread here. That's the NBA bet that I would make today.
It's funny, Eric, because our producer Weimer called me right before the show saying, what's your NBA bet? And I was like, oh, Celtics -3. And she's like, oh, Eric has the same exact one. So great minds must think alike. Now, as for the Celtics, their defense hasn't been as great as they were last season. They're not just locking opponents down, but at the same time, this offense has been really good. They currently are the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. They got an 18-5 record. They're averaging 122 points per game. But you mentioned Jason Tatum, which I find quite interesting. Last game, he didn't have his best outing, but that was because Jaylen Brown was back, and Jaylen Brown had 37 points. The issue I have with the Boston Celtics is you can take them on the spread, but when you got Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and all these players in the mix, it is one of the hardest teams in the NBA, and I'm convinced of this, to bet player props, because you don't know which one of those players is going to go off and how they're going to look in each game. But I do think they are better than the Brooklyn Nets. They'll be able to put up points on a Brooklyn Nets defense that is in the middle of the pack in terms of defensive rating. So I do like the Celtics in this one. And also, for what it's worth, Jason Tatum is now the co-favorite with Luka Doncic to be the regular season MVP. Well, Eric, that's a wrap for this edition of Bet NFL Week 13. Hopefully, guys, all your bets cash today. We are wishing you the best of luck, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for a Monday edition of Bet.